In Chapter 1, The Worthy, Thorn faces off against Brand in a brutal training match. After a fierce exchange of blows, she overpowers him, landing a strike to his ribs and pushing him into the sea. Though she receives little applause, Thorn is determined to prove herself. Master Hunan, however, continues to challenge her, setting up further fights with 3 other boys, Rauk, Sordef, and Edwall. Despite the odds, Thorn fights fiercely, but when she focuses on Rauk, she ignores the other 2 and is caught off guard. Edwall, attempting to assist, becomes the victim of a fatal accident, impaled by Thorn's broken sword. The boys are stunned, and Thorn, horrified, faces the consequences of her actions. Master Hunan, with a glint in his eye, names her a murderer, leaving Thorn shaken and fearful for the first time in years. In Chapter 2, In the Shadows. Brand struggles with the aftermath of Edwall's death and Thorn's wrongful labeling as a murderer. He recalls his mother's dying words about doing good and standing in the light, but he feels lost and uncertain about what is right. Despite being given a prestigious position as a warrior, Brand remains troubled by his inaction during Thorn's fight, and the guilt of not speaking up weighs on him. Meanwhile, a heated debate unfolds in the gods, all about war with the Islanders and the Vanster men. Thorn is condemned for killing Edwall, with many calling for her execution. Brand, conflicted, finally speaks out against the injustice, insisting Thorn isn't a murderer. However, Father Yarvi warns him that speaking the truth without considering the consequences is dangerous. Brand is left questioning the meaning of good, truth, and the price of standing in the light. In Chapter 3, Justice. Thorn finds herself imprisoned and shackled, reflecting on her current situation. She receives a visit from her mother, who is distressed by the news of Thorn's supposed murder of Edwall. Despite her mother's pleas, Thorn insists it wasn't murder. Thorn is left to grapple with the harsh reality of her fate, execution by stoning. Father Yarvi arrives, and after assessing her situation, he offers a chance for redemption by swearing an oath of service to him. Though initially skeptical, Thorn agrees to the terms. Yarvi's cold demeanor and cryptic nature add to her confusion. She's released from her chains and sent aboard a ship, the South Wind, bound for Skeckenhouse. Yarvi, accompanied by his one-handed companion Rolf, seems to have an unclear purpose for Thorn's involvement in this journey. Thorn's fate remains uncertain, but she is determined to survive and learn the truth. In Chapter 4, Family. Brand returns home late after helping with various tasks, including cutting peat and fixing a cart. He shares a meal with his sister Rin, who expresses concern about his upcoming raid. Brand talks about the riches that come with a successful raid, but acknowledges that some men never return. Rin gives Brand a handmade dagger crafted by her as a reminder of home. She mentions her skill in smelting steel and hints at her aspirations to become a better smith. Brand is deeply touched by the gift, but worries about leaving her alone. As they talk, Brand admits to telling Father Yarvi the truth about Thornbathu, despite the consequences. Rin scolds him for always trying to fix things, and the two discuss the burden of doing what's right, even when it leads to bad results. The chapter ends with Brand contemplating his choices, holding the dagger. In Chapter 5, Kneeling. Thorn and Father Yarvi arrive in Skeckenhouse, where they meet the towering King Grom Gilgorm, the infamous breaker of swords, and the rest of his court. Thorn is forced to kneel in the presence of the High King and his powerful allies, including the stern grandmother Wexen. Thorn, still grieving her father's death, is confronted by Gorm, who mockingly recalls his duel with her father, Storn Headland. Yarvi skillfully navigates the political tension, emphasizing the need for alliances with their enemies. Gorm and grandmother Wexen demonstrate their dominance, hinting at their control over many powerful factions. Yarvi subtly reveals that the High King's orders, including the prohibition on war against the Islanders, are influenced by Wexen's manipulations. As Thorn struggles with her emotions, Yarvi shares his knowledge. Wexen's plan is to push them into rash actions, and their only hope for survival lies in forging unexpected alliances. In Chapter 6, Dead Man's Mail. Brand and his fellow warriors gather for their first raid, dressed in their new war gear. Brand, despite his borrowed and mismatched armor, is filled with excitement about the upcoming raid and the possibility of fame and fortune. As King Uthal leads the warriors in a rallying speech, the men roar in unison, ready to fight. Brand eagerly awaits his turn to receive his ship assignment, hoping for the prestigious position on the king's ship. However, when Master Hunan draws his name last, Brand is handed nothing but an empty bag, exposing that Hunan knows Brand spoke to Father Yarvi about Thorn's case. Hunan scorns Brand for failing the test of loyalty, claiming that a good warrior stands with his comrades, not against them. In the end, Brand is left behind, watching as the others sail off, his dreams shattered and his hopes dashed. In Chapter 7, Poison. Thorn and her crew arrive in Yaletoft, drenched and exhausted from the storm. She struggles with the discomfort of her oath, feeling trapped as a minister's servant, and deals with her physical pain. They are greeted by Mother Kyre, King Finn's minister, who coldly denies them an audience with the king. Instead, they are offered food and shelter. That night, Thorn discovers a man attempting to poison their water. In self-defense, she kills him with a knife, realizing the man was sent by someone connected to Grandmother Wexen. Father Yarvi arrives to manage the aftermath, and the crew is thrown into chaos. Thorn's actions inadvertently save them from the poison, but her reputation becomes more complicated. King Finn is furious and vows to stand against the High King, creating an unexpected alliance with Getland. Thorn, despite her relief, senses something is off in the entire situation. In Chapter 8, Lost and Found. Brand, drunk and disillusioned, struggles with the aftermath of the raid. While his fellow warriors return victorious, Brand is consumed by self-loathing and regrets not being chosen for the raid. He spends his days in a drunken haze, blaming others for his failures. His sister, Rin, had hoped for more from him, but he feels he's lost everything. After an encounter with an old man named Rolf, Brand finds himself in a sparring match with Thorn, which ends violently. Despite the aggression, he is given a second chance to prove himself, joining Rolf's crew for a dangerous journey. Rolf needs men with nothing to lose, and Brand, with his past failures and self-doubt, fits the bill. Brand agrees to join, ready to find a new purpose and to prove himself while Thorn's disapproval lingers. In Chapter 9, the first lesson. The South Wind sets sail, newly outfitted and ready for their journey, but its crew is a rough and varied group. Thorn faces the harsh realities of being surrounded by dangerous, unrefined men, including the intimidating Dostovoy and Oda, and a scarred Vanster man named Fror. The crew is as gritty as their surroundings, and Thorn's interactions with them only heighten her discomfort. Meanwhile, her mother expresses worry, and Thorn lashes out, frustrated by their strained relationship. Father Yarvi introduces Skiffer, a seasoned thief and fighter, who is assigned to teach Thorn how to fight. After a brutal lesson from Skiffer, Thorn, humiliated but determined, joins the crew on the ship, with Brand also joining her on the back oars. As they leave Getland behind, Thorn faces the emotional toll of her decision, unsure of what lies ahead but knowing she cannot turn back. In Chapter 10, the second lesson. The South Wind docks at Roystock, a chaotic port town filled with beggars, raiders, and merchants. The crew is rough and disorganized, with Thorn and Brand at odds. Skiffer, the experienced fighter, begins Thorn's training, demanding that she become faster, more ruthless, and less reliant on traditional fighting styles. Despite her anger and frustration, Thorn repeatedly fails in her sparring with Brand, ending up in the sea each time. Skiffer teaches her through brutal lessons, using quick movements and strikes to demonstrate the importance of speed and cunning in combat. Thorn struggles, but starts to grasp the lesson. Meanwhile, Brand, who has his own doubts and struggles, faces a similar humiliating experience when Skiffer tosses him into the water. Skiffer advises Thorn to fight with lighter weapons and armor, embracing her agility, and dismisses the outdated advice of her deceased father. In Chapter 11, the third lesson. Thorn and the crew of the South Wind continue their journey along the Divine River. Thorn's expectations for an exciting adventure are crushed by the grueling conditions of travel with hard work, poor weather, and relentless training. Skiffer begins Thorn's next lesson in fighting, teaching her to be faster and more adaptable. Thorn struggles with the weight of a heavy iron bar, as Skiffer emphasizes that a true fighter uses everything as a weapon and must be able to endure pain and discomfort without hesitation. As Thorn grows increasingly frustrated, Skiffer continues to challenge her, pushing her to improve her technique and mindset. Despite her anger, Thorn realizes the importance of learning from Skiffer's harsh methods. After a brutal training session, Safrit shows Thorn kindness, and Thorn finally collapses from exhaustion, finding some comfort in the crew's rough but caring camaraderie. In Chapter 12, the God's Anger. The crew of the South Wind continues their journey along the Divine River. Despite the hardships of rowing, poor weather, and constant bickering, Thorn keeps pushing herself in her training. Brand reflects on her perseverance and strength, admiring her resilience despite constant setbacks. The crew stops at various villages, encountering raiders and bandits who make Rolf wary. As they near more dangerous waters, Rolf emphasizes the importance of their weapons and staying vigilant. Thorn and Brand's strained relationship continues, though she offers Rolf her father's sword, revealing her pride in his legacy. Skiffer forces Thorn into further combat training, teaching her to fight with speed and adaptability rather than raw strength. The crew faces a violent storm, with hail battering them as they work to secure the ship. Amid the chaos, Brand considers Thorn's reluctance to pray, learning more about her past and loss. In Chapter 14, Itching, Thorn continues her intense training with Skiffer, facing Brand in sparring matches where she consistently outmatches him. After several defeats, Brand admires her growing skill and resilience. The crew watches in awe, and Skiffer encourages them to challenge Thorn, but no one dares. Ada tries and fails comically to beat her. As tensions rise, Brand and Thorn briefly clash over personal grievances, but the crew's camaraderie and teasing lighten the mood. Safrit cuts Brand's beard, while the crew shares stories of their pasts, revealing little moments of vulnerability. Thorn refuses to let Skiffer cut her hair, citing a promise to her mother, and vents her frustrations about her upbringing. Brand's anger surfaces when he compares Thorn's complaints to his own struggles, creating an awkward silence. His outburst stuns Thorn, and the chapter ends with a cold distance between them as Brand turns his back. In Chapter 15, Damn Them, Thorn wakes up to an unusual morning after Skiffer lets her sleep in. As the crew works, Thorn realizes her hair has been shaved unevenly by Skiffer. Angry and humiliated, she reflects on her family and her mother's care. Father Yarvi reassures her that the new look suits her, encouraging her to embrace it as a challenge. The crew continues their grueling journey, hauling the south wind over mountainous terrain with the constant threat of bandits watching their every move. Despite the difficult labor, Thorn admires Brand's quiet strength as he endures the hardship without complaint. Thorn feels a longing to be more like him. The crew eventually makes it up the mountain with great effort, and though they reach a flat spot, they realize more difficult terrain lies ahead. Thorn's frustration grows, but the journey continues with no turning back. In Chapter 16, The Man Who Fought a Ship, the crew struggles downhill with the south wind, facing the challenge of preventing the ship from running away as they pull it down a steep, narrow track. Brand, exhausted and in pain, pushes through, though the work is grueling. As tensions rise, Thorn and Brand have a tense exchange, with Brand regretting his earlier words. Suddenly, the ship starts to slip, and Brand throws himself into action, managing to hold the ship steady with sheer force. Despite the pain, he earns the respect of the crew. Afterward, Brand reflects on his past and his dream of being a warrior. The crew, after a long, tough day, finally reaches the denied river. Father Yarvi engages in a humorous exchange with the drovers, and Brand, though hurting, takes the helm of the south wind, receiving recognition and respect from the crew. In Chapter 17, Strange Times, the crew crosses the vast steppe, a daunting and empty landscape, and encounters signs of recent conflict, including burned ships. As tensions rise, they spot another ship, the Black Dog, led by the grizzled Captain Blue Jenner. After an intense exchange, they find common ground and share a drink, though the Black Dog crew is suspicious of the South Wind's cargo, particularly Father Yarvi's mysterious chest. Thorn reluctantly agrees to a sparring challenge, showcasing her impressive fighting skills, defeating several of the Black Dog's crew. When the helmsman Crouch insults her, the situation nearly escalates into violence, but Father Yarvi intervenes with diplomacy, offering silver as an advance on future rewards. The two crews exchange tales, and though Crouch remains resentful, Thorn reflects on her growing circle of allies and enemies. In Chapter 18, A Red Day, the crew prepares for battle as they are ambushed by a group of Uzhaks, fierce horse people. The tension builds as the crew struggles to organize under the threat of the enemy, with Brand feeling the weight of the situation. Despite their small numbers, the South Wind crew forms a shield wall, and Rolf expertly uses his bow to take down several attackers. The Uzhaks attempt to break through with a series of attacks, but the crew holds their ground. In the chaos, Brand reflects on his fears and the brutal reality of battle. He's pushed to his limits, fighting alongside his crew with only instinct and fury guiding him. As the battle rages, Thorn fights fiercely, her bloodied smile showing her exhilaration in the violence. The crew eventually forces the Ujaks back, but the battle leaves them all scarred and exhausted. In Chapter 19, Battle Joy, Thorn revels in the battle as she kills with precision, feeling the battle joy her father once described. As the crew struggles to hold a shield wall against the Ujaks, Thorn fights fiercely, hacking down enemies with her axe. The battle grows more intense, and Thorn experiences the bloodlust and adrenaline she'd only heard about in her father's stories. As the Ujaks press harder, a massive Ujak with a club breaks through the wall. Thorn faces him fearlessly, hacking at his legs until Fror finishes him off. The Ujaks begin to retreat, but reinforcements appear, threatening to overwhelm the crew. At this critical moment, Skiffer reveals the elf magic she possesses, wielding a powerful relic that destroys several Ujaks in one strike. As the battle subsides, Skiffer admits the cost of her magic, and Oda, struck by a blast, dies. His sacrifice a reminder of the price of power. In Chapter 20, not like the songs, the crew reflects on the aftermath of their battle, with Thorn grappling with the violence she's committed. Father Yarvi, though stoic, acknowledges the cost of their victory and the harsh realities of leadership. The group travels toward Kaliv, a sprawling, chaotic city teeming with traitors, warriors, and an unsettling air of instability. Brand and Thorn's journey brings them face to face with the city's disorder and tensions, with unrest in the streets and foreign powers vying for control. Prince Varoslav, who is supposed to offer assistance, reveals his manipulative and dangerous nature. Thorn and Brand, now recognized for their deeds, are presented with gold as rewards, but Yarvi remains focused on gaining Varoslav's support for their cause. As they navigate this web of politics, Yarvi hints at his larger plan, while Brand feels increasingly uncertain about the price of their success. The chapter ends with a sense of looming danger. In Chapter 21, What Getland Needs, the crew arrives in Kaliv, a vast, chaotic city full of poverty, tension, and smoldering fires. The city is a hub of trade and power struggles, and Father Yarvi navigates these dynamics, seeking support for his cause. Prince Varoslav, who controls Kaliv, seems both intimidating and calculating, offering rewards to Brand and Thorn for their bravery. However, his help comes with strings attached. He remains non-committal, withholding assistance for the High King or anyone seeking to disrupt the balance of power in the region. Yarvi is forced to accept Varoslav's cryptic promise of help and urges the crew to continue their journey to the First of Cities. Thorn and Brand are left with mixed feelings of excitement and fear as they prepare to seek aid from the Empress despite the prince's disdain and warning about the Empress's insatiable thirst for blood and elf relics. In Chapter 22, Luck, the journey has been filled with disappointments and hardships for Brand and the crew. They face insects in the bogs, dangerous seas, and the brutal aftermath of their battle with the Horse People, which haunts Brand's thoughts. Upon reaching the First of Cities, they are struck by its grandeur, with towering stone buildings and bustling ships from all over the world. However, the excitement is tempered by the harsh realities of life in Kaliv: chaos at the docks, lawlessness, and violence. Prince Varoslav, the city's ruler, remains a mystery, playing dangerous games with Father Yarvi. Yarvi seeks aid from the Empress of the South, though Varoslav is uninterested in offering help. The crew faces a new set of dangers as they navigate the city's undercurrents, with Yarvi's plans uncertain. As they prepare to meet the Empress, they realize they need more than just cunning. They need luck. In Chapter 23, Behind the Throne, Thorn is reluctantly dressed in extravagant clothing by Safrit, which makes her feel humiliated and out of place. As they move through the bustling streets of Kaliv, Thorn's discomfort grows. Father Yarvi explains the need to blend in for diplomatic purposes, but Thorn remains skeptical. At the palace, they are received by Duke Mikedas, who is more interested in jesting than offering help. He dismisses their request with vague promises, showing no genuine interest in their cause. Thorn challenges him impulsively, but he laughs it off. Father Yarvi, ever patient, continues to play the diplomatic game, but Thorn senses that they are being stalled. Afterward, they encounter Mother Scare, a minister sent by Grandmother Wexen, who warns Yarvi with veiled threats. Thorn realizes that their path is already being controlled by others, and their chances of success seem slim. Yarvi acknowledges this, revealing his foresight. In Chapter 24, Old Friends, Brand struggles to keep up with Thorn's growing skill in combat, feeling increasingly outmatched. As they train, Thorn's agility and strength are evident, leaving Brand and his comrades struggling to land a blow. Skiffer offers advice on not getting too proud in battle, while Thorn reveals her father's wisdom about pride. The group is then interrupted by a visitor, and a woman enters, Sumail, a former ally of Yarvi and Rolf. She has become a trusted advisor to the Empress of the South, Vialine, though she is aware of the political struggles surrounding the Empress's court, particularly with Duke Makedas controlling most of the power. Sumail's arrival offers a glimmer of hope for Yarvi, who seeks her help in meeting the Empress. Despite the challenges, Yarvi seems relieved to reconnect with an old friend, and Sumail's loyalty remains unwavering. In Chapter 25, Hopes, Thorn grows increasingly frustrated with the chaos and heat of the First of Cities. As she and Brand push through crowded streets, they discuss their frustration with the city and their growing tension. Thorn finds herself conflicted over her feelings for Brand, realizing that their bond has shifted from mere comradeship to something more complicated. Their emotional turmoil is highlighted when Brand inadvertently makes Thorn feel unnoticed as he buys beads for another woman. Her anger erupts when they are confronted by thugs from Mother Scare's group. In a fierce confrontation, Thorn fights with raw intensity, demonstrating her growing skill and frustration. Brand tries to protect her, but Thorn's violent outburst leaves them in a precarious situation. As they flee into an alley, Thorn struggles with her conflicting emotions toward Brand, feeling angry, confused, and hurt. In Chapter 26, Ruins, Brand reflects on his failure with Thorn, feeling increasingly distant from her as she grows stronger and more confident. Despite their past camaraderie, he fears he's ruined their friendship by his unspoken feelings, which Thorn has likely noticed. Thorn, in turn, struggles with her emotions, uncertain about her growing attraction to Brand and the complicated dynamics between them. Meanwhile, in the courtyard, Thorn faces off with Frore in a training fight, which Skiffer critiques sharply. As Thorn faces her next challenge with Skiffer, Sumail arrives with surprising news. She introduces Vialine, the Empress of the South, who steps forward with an unexpected presence. Despite their hopes, Vialine refuses to ally with them, citing her obligations to her uncle and aunt's promises. The chapter ends with Thorn left questioning her hopes and the political complexities that hinder their mission. In Chapter 27, Some Bloody Diplomat, Thorn triumphs in a training fight with Skiffer, marking a significant personal victory. However, her emotions remain complicated, especially regarding Brand, who has been distant since their encounter in the market. Later, Sumail informs Thorn that the Empress, Vialine, wants to speak with her. Thorn is taken to the Empress's lavish palace, overwhelmed by its opulence. There, Vialine and Thorn engage in a candid conversation, where Vialine reveals her struggle against her uncle, Duke Makedas, who seeks to control her. Vialine admires Thorn's strength and independence, recognizing her own constraints within the palace politics. When the Duke arrives with guards, tensions escalate, and Thorn is forced to defend herself. She kills 3 of his men with swift precision, but the odds remain heavily against her. She calls out for Brand as the situation grows dire, realizing that survival may come at a steep cost. In Chapter 28, Rage, Brand is caught in a moment of self-doubt, but is soon jolted into action when he hears Thorn's cry for help. He races to her rescue, finding her in a dangerous confrontation with Duke Makedas' men. Thorn, already injured, fights fiercely, but the odds are against her. As she's cornered, Vialine leaps to her aid, allowing Thorn to deliver a fatal blow to one soldier. Brand arrives just in time to save her, violently dispatching the Vanster man and throwing Duke Makedas to his death. Thorn, severely wounded, struggles to stay conscious but refuses to give up. As she's tended to, Vialine expresses her gratitude, dissolves her alliance with the High King, and promises her support to Getland. Meanwhile, Thorn reflects on her identity and her oaths, ultimately deciding to stay true to her path despite the temptation to accept Vialine's offer of a bodyguard position. In Chapter 29, Thorn awakens in pain from her injuries, including a stab wound from Duke Makedas. Struggling to move, she reflects on her suffering and curses her circumstances. She encounters a mysterious man who seems to be observing her before she is tended to by Father Yarvi. She endures a foul-tasting potion and questions Yarvi about his past oaths, particularly regarding the revenge he promised for his father's death. Vialine, grateful for Thorn's help, thanks her and dissolves the alliance with the High King, strengthening her position by aligning with Getland. Vialine offers Thorn a position as her bodyguard, but Thorn declines, feeling torn by her oath to return home. She receives a gift from Violin, an elf bangle, a powerful relic, which Thorn reluctantly accepts. As Thorn recovers, she reflects on her scars and the complexities of her relationships, especially with Brand, with whom tensions remain unresolved. In Chapter 30, strange bedfellows, Father Yarvi and Brand visit Mother Scare, a former emissary now imprisoned. Yarvi offers her a chance for freedom in exchange for an alliance, hoping to unite Getland and Vansterland against the true enemy, Grandmother Vexen. Despite ancient feuds, Yarvi argues that they share a common enemy and must set aside differences for survival. Mother Scare hesitates, but ultimately accepts Yarvi's offer. As they leave the prison, Yarvi reflects on the difficulties of their journey and the harsh realities they face. Sumail, waiting for them, discusses the burdens of their respective roles. Although Sumail suggests staying behind, Yarvi remains focused on his mission. He and Brand prepare to leave, and Yarvi emphasizes the importance of silence in certain moments. The crew is gathered, and they set off on their journey, knowing the challenges ahead. In Chapter 31, Farewells, Thorn bids farewell to her crew, who express admiration for her transformation from a girl into a warrior. Despite the camaraderie and respect, she feels increasingly isolated and haunted by her past. As she leaves the South Wind and heads back to Thurlby, memories of her time with the crew linger. On her return, she is greeted by her mother, who is overjoyed to see her but also notices the elf bangle Thorn wears. Thorn reflects on the changes in herself and the town, as well as her strained relationship with her mother. Her journey has made her stronger, but she feels conflicted about her past and the people in her life. The chapter ends with Thorn's mother noticing the bangle, hinting at deeper tensions and unspoken stories between them. In Chapter 32, Greetings, Brand helps the crew unload the South Wind, feeling torn between staying with the crew and facing Rin. As the ship is unloaded, Brand reflects on the journey and the changes in his companions, especially Cole's impressive carvings. The crew shares bittersweet goodbyes, aware that their paths will soon diverge. Brand, however, is most affected by his unresolved feelings for Rin. When he arrives at their home in Thurlby, he finds it changed, with strangers occupying the space. After a tense moment, he is greeted by Rin, now a skilled swordsmith, with a house that she has earned through her craft. She reveals that King Uthal now carries one of her blades, and they have built a new life together. Brand is amazed by her success and independence, realizing that while he wanted to change her life, she has already done so on her own. In Chapter 33, Wrong Ideas, Thorn visits a swordsmith on 6th Street, seeking a new blade. She meets Rin, Brand's sister, and learns of the tension between them. Rin reveals that Brand had saved Thorn's life, but he lost his place as a warrior for telling Father Yarvi the truth about Edwall's death. Thorn feels guilty for not knowing this and for how she treated Brand. She apologizes, realizing that Brand has done much for her even when she pushed him away. As they talk, Thorn sees a chain around Rin's neck, realizing that Brand had bought her the glass beads she thought were for herself. After a tense conversation, Thorn rushes to Brand's home, and the two finally confront their feelings. They share an intimate moment, and Thorn is overcome by emotions and confusion. The chapter explores their evolving relationship, with Thorn struggling to process her feelings while navigating past mistakes. In Chapter 34, Sort of Alone, Brand and Thorn wake up together, sharing a quiet, awkward moment. Brand reflects on his past and worries about what others will think of their relationship, especially Thorn's family. Thorn struggles with her own insecurities, questioning her worth and abilities. Brand reassures her, telling her she's the best woman in the shattered sea. As they grow closer, a knock at the door interrupts their intimacy. Brand's sister Rin delivers news of a raid at Hallaby and calls Brand to join the warriors. Brand feels torn but decides to go, wanting a chance at being a warrior and proving his worth. Thorn, bitter over her own treatment by warriors, expresses frustration that she wasn't asked to join. She warns Brand to return in a week or she'll move on. Brand leaves, determined but conflicted, while Thorn watches him go with a rare smile. In Chapter 35, The Chosen Shield, Thorn returns to the Citadel of Thurlby, where memories of her past, including her father's death and her imprisonment, weigh heavily on her. She meets King Uthal, who seems impressed by her deeds but remains dismissive of her status. Despite this, he invites her to practice with him, though his ill health prevents it. Thorn, feeling idle and frustrated, discusses her emotions with Cole. Later, she meets Queen Laithlin and Father Yarvi, who inform her that she has passed the test to become the Queen's chosen shield, a role that requires her to swear loyalty to Laithlin and possibly fight or die for her. Thorn accepts the honor, pledging her oath. Meanwhile, a letter arrives announcing that Grom Gilgorm accepts Uthel's challenge for a duel. The Queen prepares to move north, and Thorn is ready to join the fight. In Chapter 36, Halliby. Brand and Rock arrive in the wreckage of Halliby, a village devastated by the Vanster men. The village is in ruins, with survivors scavenging for anything useful. Brand and Rock discuss their past battles, with Rock nursing an injury, and Brand reflecting on the brutal realities of war. Master Hunnen leads the group, which includes a few young, inexperienced soldiers, towards a Vanster village called Rissentoft. Despite the devastation in Halliby, Hunnen is determined to retaliate. Brand questions the morality of burning another village for vengeance, but Hunnen insists that it's necessary to prevent further harm. Brand struggles with the idea of vengeance and the cost of violence, but he understands that in war, vengeance often takes precedence over justice. He reluctantly agrees to follow Hunnen's orders, although he still doubts whether any good will come of it. In Chapter 37, Fire, Thorn requests a new sword from Rin, who agrees to forge it using her father's bones. They begin the process by gathering materials and setting up a furnace. Thorn reflects on her role as Queen Laithlin's chosen shield, feeling the weight of her oath but growing dissatisfied with her current duties. As the two women work together, Rin asks about Thorn's relationship with Brand, which Thorn admits is unclear. They bond over the forging process, with Thorn admitting her lack of experience in anything other than fighting. After intense labor, they create a powerful blade bound with her father's bones. Rin approves of the steel's quality, and they take a break, sharing food and drink. The chapter ends with Thorn finally feeling content with the sword's creation, marking the culmination of her hard work and personal growth. In Chapter 38, Rissentoft, Brand, and his companions, led by Master Hunnen, arrive at the abandoned village of Rissentoft. The village is deserted, but they find an old man, and after an exchange, Hunnen kills him. Brand and the others search the village and burn the houses, taking a woman as a slave. Brand struggles with the morality of his actions, feeling disturbed by the violence and the woman's plight. As the village burns, Brand reflects on the difference between the songs of war and the brutal reality. He secretly releases the woman in the woods, cutting the rope that binds her, and watches her flee. The chapter highlights Brand's internal conflict and disillusionment with the violence and dehumanization of war. The imagery of the burning villages echoes the destruction he witnessed in Halliby, deepening his sense of guilt. In Chapter 39, Frozen Lakes, Thorn is trying to prove her worth as Queen Laithlin's chosen shield. She assists the Queen, who reveals that Thorn is meant for more than just serving in meetings. The Queen promises they will do great things together. However, Thorn remains uncertain about her role and feels conflicted about her loyalty and ambitions. As the group moves forward, Uthel's health worsens, and Thorn worries about the upcoming battle. She reconnects with Brand, and their conversation reveals their mutual confusion about their relationship. Brand is uncertain about his role in the conflict, and Thorn struggles with the moral consequences of their actions, especially when they talk about their past killings. The chapter ends with Thorn and Brand sharing a more intimate moment, where Thorn hints at her feelings, and Brand reciprocates despite the awkwardness. In Chapter 40, Cowardice, Brand faces a moment of truth when he refuses to swear his loyalty as a warrior of Getland. Despite the pressure from Master Hunnen and the gathering warriors, Brand hesitates, unable to commit after witnessing atrocities like the slaughter in Rissentoft. He speaks out against the violence and hypocrisy, calling out the corruption in their cause. Thorn stands beside him, embodying the true spirit of a warrior, a chosen shield who has earned her place through actions, not empty oaths. Brand's defiance earns the king's respect, but it also exposes the weakness in Getland's leadership. As the king collapses, Laithlin steps up, asserting control and rallying the troops with the chant, "Steel is the answer." Despite the fervor of the warriors, Brand remains conflicted, questioning the true meaning of being a warrior and whether violence is truly the answer. In Chapter 41, The Appointed Place, the armies of Vansterland and Getland face off in a valley. Thorn, now Laithlin's chosen shield, watches as the two armies prepare for battle. King Uthal, gravely ill, remains absent, leaving Laithlin to lead. The Vanster forces, led by Grom-Gilgorm, are well matched against Getland's warriors. Father Yarvi attempts to broker peace, suggesting an alliance, but Gorm's new minister Isrian rejects the offer and insists on a duel. Gorm challenges Uthal to a fight, but since Uthal cannot fight, Laithlin offers Thorn as her champion. Gorm, confident in his invincibility, accepts the challenge. As Thorn reveals herself as Laithlin's chosen warrior, Gorm's expression shifts to doubt. Thorn, with her elf bangle glowing, faces Gorm, declaring his death is imminent. The stage is set for their confrontation at dawn. In Chapter 42, A Brave Face, Thorn prepares for her duel with Grom-Gilgorm, the Breaker of Swords. Brand, still troubled by their past actions and the impending battle, insists they should flee. But Thorn is resolute in her decision to fight. She dons minimal armor, prioritizing speed and aggression, and sharpens her weapons, including a dagger given by Brand. Despite their fears, Thorn remains determined, acknowledging that fear keeps her alert and alive. The camp is filled with tension as warriors gather, with the Queen's and Thorn's strength contrasting with King Uthal's deteriorating health. Father Yarvi offers a brew to sharpen her senses, and Thorn prepares mentally for the challenge. Brand, unsure but supportive, vows to always be her shoulder man. As the duel approaches, Thorn, wearing her elf bangle and carrying her weapons, steps forward, ready to face Grom-Gilgorm and prove herself. In Chapter 43, Steel, Thorn faces Grom-Gilgorm in a duel to the death with Getland's warriors watching. Gorm, the Breaker of Swords, is a towering figure with unmatched strength wielding a massive sword and shield. Thorn, relying on her speed and agility, moves like a whirlwind, striking Gorm's shield and sword with fury. Despite her attacks, Gorm remains composed and powerful, his shield and sword unyielding. As the duel intensifies, Thorn watches for an opening and exploits a slight weakness in Gorm's stance, landing a blow to his shoulder. However, Gorm recovers quickly, and the fight continues in a tense deadlock. Brand watches anxiously, praying for her survival. Thorn's agility and aggression challenge Gorm's brute strength, and the fight becomes a battle of endurance, skill, and mental acuity. Thorn, marked with blood but undeterred, prepares for the next strike, determined to win. In Chapter 44, Blood Thorn continues her duel with Grom-Gilgorm, the Breaker of Swords. As the fight intensifies, Gorm shows signs of wear, his shield drooping, while Thorn, fueled by determination and her training, lands a few successful strikes. Despite her agility and speed, Gorm's immense strength and skill keep him in the fight. Thorn's sword cuts through his shield but is stopped by hidden armor, and Gorm takes advantage, disarming her and sending her stumbling back. Brand watches, filled with fear and helplessness, while Thorn refuses to give up. She continues to attack, using knives after losing her sword, but Gorm's immense power seems insurmountable. As Thorn faces him with only 2 daggers, Gorm counters by crushing her wrist and bringing the fight to a breaking point. The battle is a test of endurance, skill, and determination, with both combatants pushing their limits. In Chapter 45, Breath. Thorn fights Grom-Gilgorm in a brutal duel. As the battle intensifies, Thorn, bloodied but determined, begins to outmaneuver Gorm, landing some blows and exploiting his fatigue. However, Gorm's immense strength and skill prove difficult to overcome. Despite her best efforts, Thorn struggles against his overwhelming power. Gorm gains the upper hand, pinning her down and nearly choking her to death. Just as Thorn is on the brink of defeat, Gorm suddenly relents, releasing her and turning on his ally, Mother Isrian. He defies her and the High King, choosing to abandon his oaths and break away from Grandmother Wexen's influence. Gorm instead offers an alliance with Queen Laithlin. The warriors, stunned by this turn of events, reluctantly accept the new alliance. Brand rushes to Thorn's side, relieved to find her alive despite her injuries. The chapter ends with Gorm's victory and a new alliance between Vansterland and Getland. In Chapter 46, In the Light, Brand and Father Yarvi have a conversation about their roles and the upcoming war. Brand works with metal in the forge, while Yarvi discusses the delicate balance between war and peace, acknowledging that war might be inevitable. Brand contemplates the idea of making a key for Queen Laithlin, with Yarvi suggesting that it could be symbolic of an alliance. They talk about Thorn's duel with Gorm and the underlying motivations behind it. Yarvi reveals the depth of his manipulation, admitting to poisoning King Uthal to prevent him from fighting Gorm and to secure peace with the Vanster men. Brand is disturbed by Yarvi's pragmatic approach to leadership, But Yarvi justifies his actions, emphasizing that a minister must make difficult choices for the greater good. Brand ultimately rejects Yarvi's offer to join him, choosing instead to follow his mother's guidance and stand in the light. In Chapter 47, A Storm Coming, Thorn arrives at the training square, asserting her presence among the warriors. Master Hunan challenges her, but Thorn confidently mocks his methods, calling out his failures as a teacher. After witnessing a sparring match between two young trainees, she criticizes their lack of skill, offering to teach them herself. Thorn takes a group of girls under her wing, promising to train them and return in a month to prove their progress. Hunan initially resists, but ultimately backs down after Thorn challenges him directly. She taunts him, offering to fight him to prove her superiority, but he refuses. Thorn then calls out the other warriors, daring anyone to fight her, while emphasizing the looming threat of war. She warns the warriors that Getland will need every fighter soon, leaving with the girls to begin their training, determined and defiant.